morning, Venters. I hope you guys remember on October 12th, which was my son Kobe's birthday, and also October 12th, which is also my Uncle David's date where he left the earth, so a very important day in my life, is also a very important day in the life of a person named Dustin Kjersem. You guys might remember that we reported that this guy went camping. He was supposed to meet up with his buddy. Hours later, his buddy never heard from him, so he called his sister and family, Dustin's family that is. He ended up going to the campsite where he was supposed to meet Dustin. And if you guys remember, he actually thought that maybe a bear had attacked his friend and mauled him to death because of how horrific the scene was there when he found him at the campsite. Well, come to find out that it wasn't a bear attack, it was actually murder. They found out that a gentleman by the name of Daren Abbey, and I apologize for using the word gentleman because he's anything but apparently, like always, this guy was out on probation, went ahead and he was looking for a place to stay at the campsite. He found out that Dustin was there. Dustin, like a nice man always would, offered this guy a beer, and this guy repaid him by taking a big piece of wood or a board of some kind, and he hit Dustin with it, proceeded to stab Dustin in the neck, which I'm sure we could all agree must have been horrific, and then he proceeded to grab an axe and basically axe Dustin to death. What makes this really crappy is that after this, he grabbed the gun, he grabbed the cooler, he grabbed everything that he thought his DNA was on, and the only thing that he didn't grab was that beer can that Dustin had offered him at the beginning. You know, that free, here's a beer, buddy, have a beer with me. And that was the blessing for Dustin that he did that. His kindness actually is what helped lead the police to Daren Abbey. Now, this was all according to Sheriff Dan Springer of the Bozeman County Police, or the Gallatin County Sheriff's Office, Guys, this guy was out on probation yet again. Daren Abbey, 41-year-old, repeat offender, let go by the probation boards up there, or the parole boards, And you want to know something? There was a movie back in the day that was pretty popular. If you guys remember, it was a Tom Cruise movie, and I think it was called Minority Report. And they dealt with an issue called pre-crime in this movie. And the idea was that you could predict criminals through these oracles that they had that could see into the future, if you guys remember that weird movie. And here's the thing. We don't want to live in society where people predict crimes before they happen, right? But at the same time, we have a bona fide way of predicting criminality here in this country, at least. All you have to do is go to these parole boards. And all you have to do is see the animals that they let out each and every day in this country. And all you have to do is go to the judges' chambers and see how many small paroles and how many small bonds and bails that these judges give these heinous criminals. Do you realize that if we could just get a report of all these people that the judges and the parole boards are letting back out on the streets, it's my contention that we could actually solve crime before it happens. Good morning. So here's my question to you. I think you guys believe me and agree with me. We could literally go and sit in on parole boards all day, and you will correctly be able to guess the murders that occur tomorrow. They are literally leading us, the community, to get killed. This is scary stuff. Every single one of these bad guys has already done bad things to multiple people, and these parole boards and judges keep letting them out. Don't you think we should at least have a report each and every week that is literally just a list of heinous criminals and their picture when they get let out back into the public? If we don't stop them, then we already know it's going to continue. We must love it. We need to get parole boards out of there, and we need to replace them with artificial intelligence. That needs to be the first thing that we do. We need to get rid of human beings when it comes to these parole boards, because human beings are fallible. Human beings make horrible mistakes. At least we can set up the AI to say, hey, look at the bad guy's pupils. If you know they're gonna lie and do the same damn thing they did, because apparently, your phone can predict what videos you're gonna watch and what advertisements you're gonna click on. I'm sure those same camera phones could probably determine the evil in some of these bad people's eyes. If you were to look at the picture of the guy that took out Dustin Kjersem. Does this guy look like somebody you would want dating your daughter or hanging out with your son? Does the guy look like somebody that you would trust to sleep with around at a campsite? I mean, these things are just getting old. I think what they ought to do is they ought to throw this Abbey guy in a zoo pit with a grizzly bear and let him get what he deserves. Instead, he's probably going to get life in prison, where he gets a bed to sleep on and a warm meal 3 times a day. There's an evilness to that. I don't think giving somebody life in prison when somebody's brother, father, uncle is gone forever, I just don't see the equivalence there. And again, what makes me sick is that in 25 years or so, there's going to be some idiot out there that tries to get this Abbey guy out based on the idea that he served his time and he's paid for his bad behavior. There is no paying for this. Again, I just want everyone to know I'm a very happy person. I had a really good weekend of watching NFL football, and hopefully you guys did too. But you want to know something? If a grizzly bear would have attacked Dustin Kjersem, he would have had a better chance at survival than this guy. When you're handing somebody a beer and they immediately club you over the head with a piece of wood and try to stab you in the neck, and then they go for the axe and try to axe you up and chop you to death, man, does it get any more evil than that? This guy was out on parole, and you want to know something? The news broadcast that I watched this from, and I'll put it up here on the screen, what if I told you they didn't even have the decency to do a good reporting job and tell us what he was out on parole for? I'll tell you what he was probably out on parole for. He was probably out on parole for some heinous crime dealing with assault or a gun or attempted murder. Man, I get worked up with these things, but I'm starting to see a trend that you can't see unless you follow this stuff. Every one of these murders is preceded by a judge giving somebody a small bond or a parole board letting somebody out for the umpteenth time. This is getting sickening. I'm just going to say it because nobody else will. I'm starting to put the judges and the parole boards above the criminals when it comes to guilt, because they're letting out not just one criminal, they're letting out all the criminals that do this bad stuff. Now, hear what I'm saying. I'm not saying they're letting all criminals out on the streets, but they're letting all the criminals that do repeat offenses out on the streets. There has to come a time where the parole board says, you know what? We've heard this story before. We let you out before, and here you are before us yet again. It just seems so cruel to me. Wouldn't it be great if the news anchors could actually get in front of the parole board and ask them some questions? You know what the parole board would say? Put your cameras down. How dare you take our pictures? Right? Because they don't want to be accountable. But God, if you were one of Dustin Kjersem's family, wouldn't you want to know what the hell the parole board was thinking when they let this guy out on the street? And this guy does not deserve to see the light of day, but he didn't deserve to see the light of day, more than likely already. Now, don't get me wrong, if they end up saying that he was on probation or parole for, some minor DUI or some theft or something, that's non-violent, then I suppose that this is just one of those things that happened. But how could this guy be non-violent when his idea of a good time is to try to attack somebody that offered him a beer? Does it get any worse than that? How many of us would have done that exact same thing? As a matter of fact, I have done that exact same thing before. When me and my buddy go off-roading, when me and my buddy go out to the campgrounds, it's totally common to share beer with other campers. You're not thinking they're the bad guy. And you'd like to think that judges and parole boards would keep people like that away from our communities. But keep in mind what judges and parole boards do. They let these bad people into our communities, and then they retreat into their gated communities where they have security. It's so bizarre to me. And I'd be willing to bet that darn near every judge in the country probably has a gun. Because they probably know better. These animals are out there amongst us. Oh my goodness, if you were a judge and you could hear my voice, if I were king, you would have a scary month upcoming, because I would audit everything you've done, and I would find the judges amongst you that are letting this vermin out on the street. My only wish is that somebody else had the same feelings that I do, but apparently I'm the only one that gives a shit. At Beat Pirate 8 says he was kind and welcomed a stranger. Rest in peace, and please give him justice. You know what I hear when I hear Beat Pirate 8 say, please give him justice? I literally hear him begging judges and begging parole boards for justice. Why do we have to beg these people for justice? They're part of the problem. They are literally causing death amongst people in our communities, and it would really be nice if, instead of people standing up to get a higher wage at their job, it would be really nice if people would start to picket outside of the court office to ask for justice. Why don't we ever get together when it's something important, like our lives and our safety, rather than just when we want the annual raise? It really kind of says a lot about this country that we're willing to picket and ask for a bunch of things, but we're not willing to ask for the obvious, which is safety in our communities. Guys, these aren't virgin bad guys. These are bad guys that are experienced at doing horrible things, and they keep getting let out. God, it's enough to make you just want to scream. Ah! That wasn't a good scream. At Franklin Hernandez says, and this is what parole boards let loose. Franklin, I agree with you. Here's the crazy thing. If you guys were to look at these videos and examine the comments, 1 out of every 4 or 5 comments literally echoes this same thing. People have figured it out. This is on the judge, and this is on the parole boards, and I want to know why we never ever see a reporter with a microphone in front of these people getting some answers. That's why people don't trust the media anymore. The media comes across as one-sided, biased, blind to certain things, and then they show other things that are just the stupidest things to show. The absolute stupidest things to show. And when we have something that's actually life and death for our communities, the reporters are nowhere to be found. How is that any different than what they do in these tyrannical countries that we're always told about, right? We were always told growing up that in places like Russia, you never hear the truth. You hear the propaganda that people want you to hear. Guys, how is that any different than what we hear from our media here in America? For them to do another 2-minute story, that's all that Kjersem's life was worth, a 2-minute update, and they can't even tell us why this Abbey character was out on parole. There's something really fishy about that, isn't it? So no, I no longer trust our judges, I no longer trust our parole boards, and I no longer trust our media. Because when it comes to our safety, they are AWOL. They are nowhere to be found. @one Dragon Rider says, yet this guy is still breathing. Our justice system is a complete joke. Did you guys ever think when you were 5 and 10-year-old kids that our country was this demented and messed up? Did you guys ever think that bad guys would get out on the street like a real-life Freddy Krueger and come after people? Because that's what they're unleashing on us. They're literally unleashing violence and evil into our communities. And once again, if someone were to tell you, hey, I'm a judge, I put bad guys in jail, you know what he'd also be saying? If he was honest, I also let all those bad people back into the community a couple years later. It's the same story over and over. Wouldn't it be great if a judge could go into our comments and say, Jesse, I'm one of those guys. You don't know what the F you're talking about. Because you know what I would say? How nice of you to finally speak up so people can tell you what they really think of you. I think judges and parole boards are crap. By the way, I saw a stat yesterday that Detroit Lions quarterback over his last 6 or 7 games has thrown 28 touchdown passes and only 24 incompletions. So Jared Goff, hats off to you. Great football that you're playing the last couple of years. Very great, impressive football. I think you're actually a better quarterback than Matt Stafford. So even though Matt went to the Rams and won a Super Bowl, I have a feeling there's a chance you're going to win a Super Bowl up there with Detroit. So keep going. I forgot to write the guy's name. But it says here, paroled from what charge? I remember when reporters used to actually report. You know, let me ask you guys a question. When you watch the news, it's a half-hour news show, right? And during that half hour, I'm guessing they have 8-9 minutes worth of commercials. So you have about 20 minutes to give us the news. I don't need to know the traffic at 6 or 7 in the evening. I think what they ought to do is give us a more complete story. I think Kjersem deserved justice. I think the bad guy deserved to be in prison. And I believe the story deserves more than 90 seconds worth of coverage. Isn't it a shame that the news rushes through the important stories that actually mean something to the communities they live in so that they can tell us the daily goofy story that no one cares about? Half the time I watch the morning news, they're going to different restaurants and showing, about specials that this new restaurant has. No offense to the restaurant owners, but the news should not be a commercial for people that own restaurants and thrift shops. The news should be where we get important news. So instead of 90 seconds, how about you devote 5 or 10 minutes to this story that's so important for people to hear? And how about we find out a little bit more about the problem that Abbey was let out of jail for? I get so worked up, I start to repeat myself. And it's early in the morning. So normally most people kind of get their coffee in them and they get a chance to wake up, but this is how I wake up. But guys, whether you're red or blue, we're all the victims here. And it comes about every single day. And I could literally speak on this every single day. And it seems that nothing will happen. Now, the only reason I'm talking on this story is because, Sean, you had mentioned, hey, with these particular stories, try to give us updates. And I felt like this was an important update. This guy was so vicious that people thought it was a bear attack. And then this guy tried taking the cooler and the guns and everything he could out of that campsite because he didn't want to leave his DNA behind. Luckily, we had his fingerprints and probably his lip marks on the beer can. But that just goes to show you that this guy's plan was to eliminate a human being off the earth and then to get away with it. And I have a feeling that's the plan of every murderous person. So even when they say, hey, murders are down, when they really aren't, and when they say all this stuff, you never know. There could just be bodies that haven't been found yet. How many people in this country go missing every year? And you have all these foolish people saying, oh my God, that's proof that aliens are real and that interdimensional beings are stealing our DNA. No, you fool, it's proof that bad guys are getting away with crimes and no one's doing anything about it. That's what it really is. Get aliens and interdimensional beings out of your thought. At John Templeton says, lenient parole boards strike again. Do you guys remember this giant flood that they've been trying to clean up in Spain? Today I saw pictures of the president of Spain, and he went out there into the worst hit areas. And you want to know what they did to him? They grabbed mud and they flung it at the King of Spain. If I said president, I apologize. I meant to say the King of Spain. So the King of Spain goes out there to be amongst the people, right? Because he wants to let them know how bad he feels. And you know what these people did? They threw mud and they hurled insults at him because they're tired of this crap. They're tired of the people that are elite and successful. Good morning. They're tired of them always having protection. The other day I told you that Paul Pelosi, Nancy Pelosi's husband, his attacker, gets life in prison without the possibility of parole. Why, when the elites get attacked, does somebody pay the ultimate punishment? But when we get attacked, they're out in 5 to 6 years. There's just something that's wrong about that. That's what leads to revolt. And I'm not saying let's revolt over this because God, people would be revolting every day. But why can't we as a people say, you know what? Each and every bad guy that the judges and parole boards let out, their name needs to be available on a list and it needs to be shown on the news so people at least have a chance of protecting themselves. So I don't know about you guys, but I can tell just by looking at myself in the mirror that I've gained a handful of pounds, literally just over the past 3 or 4 weeks from all the candy and junk that I've been eating. And I've been observing the 2/3 rule, you know, drinking water and walking. But there does come a point where, just like in these situations here, you hit a tipping point. You know, if you're eating 1 or 2 little bite-sized Halloween candies a day, you're probably going to be completely fine. But if you're eating 10 of those a day, which your boy, if he were to be honest, would have to admit, there was a couple of days there where I was eating quite a few of these candies. And I was just thinking, oh, my walk and my water will power me through. And again, it probably would if you did that for 1 day. But I was doing it for the last 3 or 4 weeks, so I've gained a little bit of weight. I'm going to try to go ahead and avoid the sugar. You know, that's one of the things that small to medium-sized people do. They keep track of things and they say, hey, before I start getting up there 20 or 30 pounds heavy, I'm going to catch myself now. So if you're in that same boat that I am, where all of a sudden you've been eating candy and junk food, and you look at yourself in the mirror and you say, hey, I'm definitely bigger than I was a couple weeks ago, then what you need to do is you need to catch yourself now instead of letting it get really, really bad. Because you got to remember, in just 3 short weeks, we're going to be indulging in, you know, Thanksgiving food. Turkey and ham and mashed potatoes and all the fixings. So what we need to do now is we need to go ahead and make that change. Start slowing down on the sweets. Get to the point where you lose 3 or 4 pounds before you put it right back on at Thanksgiving time. And then after Thanksgiving, we'll lose 3 or 4 pounds right before we gain it again at Christmas time. And then after Christmas, we'll just lose 10, 15 pounds and we'll be right back on track. These times of years, I can never talk in the morning. Maybe that's why my channel is no good. This time of year is when these bad things happen. This is when we start to gain weight. But you know what's even more tough than gaining weight this time of year? To know that this Kjersem guy, his family is going to have that empty spot at the table. To know that there's going to be Christmas gifts that this guy might have purchased throughout the year. You know, wouldn't that be sad if your uncle actually produced? Oh, come on, lady. Wouldn't that be sad? You know how some people buy their gifts early in the year because, you know, for saving money purposes and stuff? Wouldn't that be something if you found out that he ended up buying his family members some gifts, but he never got a chance to give them to them? And how would you feel if you had a chance to open up your uncle's gift and he was no longer on the planet? Wouldn't that just be the saddest thing? Especially when you consider that there's absolutely no reason for that. You know, if this bad guy ends up going to prison for the rest of his life, that means his parents are going to be able to visit him every single weekend. Wouldn't that be nice to have your folks be able to visit you every single weekend? Meanwhile, this guy's kids, this Dustin Kjersem's kids, they never ever get to hear their dad's voice again. They never ever get to give him a hug again. But yet this bad guy, he's going to be able to get visitations all the time from his friends and family. But here's the thing, friends and family, a lot of times they get to the point where they don't even visit these people. And it just makes you wonder, why are you giving them second chances if their family doesn't even want anything to do with them? I hope you guys have a wonderful day. I want you guys to keep walking. Remember, when you walk, you lose weight. But when you walk, it also gives you a chance to strategize, think about things that are happening in your life, and make good decisions. If you're ever a member of the parole board, if you are a judge, read the comments on these videos. People are tired of you guys letting these people out. And with that being said, try to have a wonderful day. I'll see you tomorrow.